Anticipating an invasion of the Earth's sphere, Neo Zeon began developing several mobile suits with this express purpose in mind, and one of these was the AMX-101 Galluss-J. Inspired by the success of the goof from the One-Year War, several former Zeon engineers began work on this ground-focused close combat mobile suit, although it has to be said that despite being focused on ground combat, it was also capable of operating in space. And what it could also do was take a lot of punishment and dish out a lot of punishment. With its weapons, we again see that goof inspiration shining through. On the left arm, the standard hand has been replaced by a finger launcher machine gun. Just like with the goof, the fingers here have been replaced by machine guns, which can achieve a firing rate of 260 rounds per minute. By themselves, they don't deal a lot of damage, but they are very useful for suppressive fire. Plus, again, just as with the goof, despite serving as a machine gun, the finger launcher could still serve as a normal hand to grab onto things, and it was also sturdy enough to punch things. Which then brings us to its second goof-inspired weapon, the arm punch. Both arms had an extension mechanism that could basically launch the fists into the enemy. This gave the punches much more power, and it was also very useful for catching enemies off guard, and supposedly this was inspired by the goof's heat rod. And finally, for close combat, it also comes with a beam saber that is stored somewhere. Neither the anime nor the official art show us where it's stored, but the high-grade model kit gives us some suggestions. Two of these are that it is somewhere on the backpack, and the third one is that it's in one of the side skirts. And in the case of this third option, it is impossible that it has two beam sabers instead of just one. For long-range combat then, it comes with two double missile pods on the shoulders, and definitely one of the most unique guns out there, the energy gun. It combines a powerful 3.8 megawatt beam rifle with a 4-tube missile launcher, and for some reason, the main grip is on the side rather than on the bottom, so the gangster grip here is canonically the correct way to hold this thing, although it can also be seen holding the gun the quote-unquote right way up, with the missile launcher then being on top of it, and this looks really clunky. Also, talking about that missile launcher, it has a hatch on the side or on the top, depending on how you want to hold this thing, making it easy to quickly reload missiles. Alternatively, at least one unit that was used by Zeon remnants was seen using a BR-87A beam rifle instead of the standard energy gun. Despite all of these weapons then, the Galluss-J was still a very agile machine. Not only did it have powerful and movable thrusters on its backpack, and did the body itself consist of separately movable blocks, but it also got the Earth Federation's movable frame technology. Something that Axis managed to get thanks to those aforementioned ex-Zeon engineers. After the One-Year War ended, they were employed at various places throughout the Earth sphere for the Earth Federation, but with the return of Axis, they then went to Axis, taking a lot of Federation know-how with them, like the movable frame technology, the linear seat technology, and also Gundarium alloy, all of which were used to make the Galluss-J as deadly as it was. Combine this with the fact that it was relatively cheap to produce and easy to pilot, and the Galluss-J would quickly enter mass production, together with the mobile suit that it was meant to operate alongside with, the Zissa. The development history of this machine is a subject for another time, but for the sake of this video, let's just say that the Zissa was a mobile suit-shaped missile pod that came with an optional booster. So standard operating procedure would call for the Zissas to first weaken the enemy with a missile barrage, after which the Gallusses would move in to finish the job at close range. Officially, the Galluss-J was first used in combat by Maschi Marcello, who was then the captain of the Endra, and they would continue to be used on the front lines until the end of the First Neo-Zeon War. at which point they were being used by both the main Neo-Zeon forces under the command of Haman Khan and the splinter faction called the Glemmy faction under the command of Glemmy Toto. The Galluss-Js used by the Haman faction kept their standard color scheme, while the Galluss-Js of the Glemmy faction were painted silver. Still, despite all of the Galluss-J's pros, it did have some cons. It was relatively big and bulky, which was not ideal for a close combat mobile suit, and according to one source, it was apparently not that easy to maintain, which was an issue that the Galluss-G sought to correct. We can see that the armor has been overhauled in various locations, and that it got a lot more weapons. On the backpack, it got a cannon and a 9-tube missile launcher, it got grenade launchers on the shoulder armor, and the energy gun was upgraded. Just be careful not to confuse this Galluss-G with another Galluss-G that appeared in the mangas made by Kazuhisa Kondo. This version stays much closer to the design of the original Galluss-J. But so, with the Galluss-J being so widely used during the first Neo-Zeon War, it shouldn't come as a surprise that after that war, there were still quite a few left, some of which would be used as is, whereas others would be modified. And two of these modifications would seek to address another issue that was levied against the Galluss-J. Because of all of this built-in weaponry that it had, it ended up as a bulky and relatively heavy mobile suit, especially for something meant as an agile close combat machine. The first modification that we saw was the Galluss-K. With this unit, they decided to embrace the bulk of the Galluss-J. They saw that it worked, so they figured they would just push it even further to the limit by turning the Galluss-K into a long-range support mobile suit. First of all, the armor was changed around quite a bit. The legs became more blocky, the shoulders more spiky, the head-mounted antenna was removed, thrusters were removed, and in the case of the novel version, the arms got more armor, potentially in exchange for removing the arm punch, which the OVA version did still have. And in terms of weapons, gone were the finger launcher, missile pods, and energy gun. It got a 3-tube missile pod on the left arm, a hyper knuckle buster of the Gazome on the left side of the backpack, and then either a giant bazooka, if you're going with the novel version, or a Zaku Cannon's big gun mounted on the right side of the backpack if you're going with the OVA version. Also, the right arm has a multi-purpose hardpoint, just like the left arm, meaning that it is also possible to equip stuff there, like another 3-tube missile pod. And perhaps another possibility comes to us from Gundam Battle Operation 2. Here we see the Galluss-K with that hyper knuckle buster on the right side instead of on the left side, meaning that it could be possible to choose which side to have the beam cannon on, and therefore perhaps even to equip 2 of them, which would then be some serious firepower. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum then, we've got the Schuzrum-Galluss. Trying to stay true to the original purpose of the Galluss-J, they decided to lower its weight as much as possible by stripping anything that they considered unnecessary. And at first glance, it might sound like this unit was a resounding success. The resulting Schuzrum-Galluss was less than half as heavy as the Galluss-J, and thanks to its seriously reduced armor, it was much more nimble as well, now being able to perform human-like maneuvers in close combat. And to make the most out of this, its main weapons were now 2 custom shields that were made by combining Zaku 2 shields with Gira Doga shields. But not in use, they served as shoulder armor, and during combat, they were used as boxing gloves. They could also be used to block enemy attacks, and they were treated with anti-beam coating. Its other standard weapon then was a chain mine. These mines could either be used one by one, or they could be whipped out all at once. There was one big, glaring problem with the Schuzrum-Galluss though. It was meant as an assault mobile suit for use against enemy bases or enemy ships in space. And part of the stuff that was deemed unnecessary were the vast majority of its thrusters. Instead, it had to rely on two other methods of transportation. One, to get close to its enemies, it had to literally hitch a ride on another unit, and then two, once within enemy range, it could use magnetic anchors that were installed instead of the missile pods. So if anything were to go wrong, it is shit out of luck. By sheer luck, it did survive this encounter, but it is very clear that this machine was a kamikaze mobile suit that wasn't really intended to return, because one way or another, the pilot was gonna get killed. Gundam Battle Operation 2 calls this thing an improved version of the Galluss-J, but my common sense begs to differ. Anyways, the final variant of the Galluss-J is the Galluss-S, a very fancy version of the Galluss that was made by Mars Zeon for combat on Mars. But rather than a mass production mobile suit, this machine was made as a commander-type unit. It would either lead troops into battle or escort VIPs, something that its color scheme also alluded to. Mars Zeon consisted mainly of Cassilia loyalists, and so its white and red color scheme was inspired by the color scheme used by Cassilia's Royal Guard during the One-Year War. And one of its pilots, a man named Chester, was even said to be part of that original Royal Guard, where he piloted a GAN-type mobile suit. And this color scheme was so symbolic for Mars Zeon that we see it appearing on other important machines as well, like the captured Gundam F-90 and Charles Rochester's RF Gelgoog. As for the weapons, it kept the original's finger launcher and arm punch mechanism, it had two beam sabers stored on the back skirt, a heat lance, and a special shield that has only been described as Royal Guard style. And what's also interesting to point out is that the redesigned legs and chest bear some striking resemblances to those of the Q-Blade, leading to speculation that both machines were quite similar under the hood. But no matter how powerful the Galluss-S was, the war on Mars would eventually turn against Mars Zeon, forcing Chester to make some modifications to his unit. Rather than a royal close combat mobile suit, it became a stealthy guerrilla machine. It was now outfitted with a large beam cannon that looked almost identical to the Lange-Bruno gun from the Gira-Doga heavy arm type, and it was repainted in desert colors, making it much harder to spot in the Martian deserts. And this is where the Galluss-J's development history ends for now. It is a very unique looking machine that for a very long time felt like it was all but forgotten about, despite being prominently featured in Double Zeta Gundam. For me though, it always held a special place in my heart because I extensively used it in Giran's Greed. I also love the design of its head. So yeah, let me know down below what you think about the Galluss-J, its goofy gun, and its many descendants. As always, a big thank you to the Patreon supporters. I hope everyone watching has a great day, and I'll see you all next time.